Hey guys, in this episode we're going to discuss the film The Best of Enemies, starring Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell. We'll give you our thoughts on the film's characters and the overall message. This is episode 134 of the Reel-ists podcast. Hello, listeners, and welcome. I'm Donnie.
And I'm Oscar.
And we have our producer, Ruben. Ruben says hello. What was that? What was that new nickname I came up with? All the nicknames I put on your card. What was the newest one? There was a new one.
I remember there was a new one. I remember.
Wasn't it one I
Lil
said?
Ruru, I think. That was a new one. But there was another one, too. But Lil Ruru. Lil Ruru from the block. Anyways, not to get sidetracked here.
They're like,
What?
couldn't you do this like before you hit record?
Oh, man. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Reel-ists podcast. We appreciate you guys giving us a listen. If you're a returning listener, what'd you say?
Do Spanish.
Yeah, Oscar, you'll translate. You'll do the Spanish.
I know there's some Spanish speaking
for all our Spanish listeners.
Mom, I know you listening.
Exactly. If you're a returning listener, thank you for returning to the Reel-ists podcast. We really appreciate it. Before we jump into this episode, I want to quickly remind you guys that we are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Team Reel-ists, Team Rwelists, no dash. You can also find us on YouTube. You can also listen to us on iTunes, and you can rate us on iTunes as well. So if you're feeling a little extra motivated, you got a little more free time in your day, and you want to do something really fun and productive and really cool and something we'd really appreciate, send us a little review on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing, what you like about our podcast, what we can improve upon, all that good stuff, right?
That's right.
All right. Quickly want to remind you guys also this is going to be a spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen this movie and don't want to be spoiled.
What movie?
Oh, thank you.
They are the intro, but still.
It is The Best of Enemies. I don't know why I said it like that. Like it's a superhero film or something.
All right.
So as always, Oscar, why don't you give us some quick thoughts of what you thought of The Best of Enemies.
All right, I'm gonna switch it up here, and I'm gonna use just a few words to describe my quick thoughts.
Okay.
All right.
3 words.
3 words?
Yep.
Dang. Okay. Interesting. Misleading.
Damn.
I mean that just sounds bad because I'm not giving in a little bit of context of what I'm saying. And the third word, I would say informative.
Okay.
I think those would be the 3 words. Now let me explain. Interesting.
Elaborate, please.
Interesting because this story was a nice story to hear. Just about this moment in time and how things started to change. You know, I think that's something that usually doesn't get mentioned in like the overall like arc of like what's American history. Like it's mentioned, you know, segregation and all that, you know, the racism and things that happened. But generally speaking, like it just flips a turn where you get one case or 2 cases of like were big, like and I'm not sure if this is like right, but it was like Brown versus the School of Education and things like that, where you hear like a few cases and then you just start to hear like things started to turn where, you know, everything started to go where it was all integrated and stuff. And I think this was just a nice way to see like almost like a personal case. Like it was like an individual school district that was dealing with this, and it was a decision made by the people living there rather than, you know, politics above them that were saying you have to do this. It was like a nice way to kind of see how that would happen and how that played out for some areas. So I thought that was very interesting and informative. I guess it kind of goes hand to hand. The misleading, just only in the sense that the trailers indicated that this was going to be a little bit of an equal balance between these 2 characters of Sam Rockwell and Taraji P. Henson's character, and it kind of leaned a little bit more towards the Sam Rockwell character arc, with the supporting of Taraji P. Henson's kind of just giving you a little bit of like the opposite view and some reactions to things. So I think that was just a little bit disappointing because I wanted to kind of see the life that she had as well. We get a little bit of a touch here, we get a little bit of information, but I think in the same way that they showed Sam Rockwell having to deal with like how people around him were thinking, I think it would have been really nice to see that from her side. maybe like getting more support, like more people are coming to her and saying, hey, can you help us out, or keep doing what you're doing, you're speaking for us, and you're doing something that I don't have the courage to do, or something like that kind of showed that, you know, she was appreciated by everyone in her community. So something like, I mean, I'm assuming that was the case, but yeah, so that kind of stuff I think would have been nice to see. So what are your 3 words? Or tell us what what this movie is about first, and then your 3 words.
So Google says the true story of the unlikely relationship between Ann Atwater, an outspoken civil rights activist, and C.P. Ellis, a local Ku Klux Klan leader. During the racially charged summer of 1971, Atwater and Ellis come together to co-chair a community summit on the desegregation of schools in Durham, North Carolina. The ensuing debate and battle soon lead to surprising revelations that change both their lives forever. Which I even think that's a little misleading because, I mean, the whole surprising revelation that changed. I mean, well, let me give you my 3 words that describe this movie. I would say it was.
This is what Donnie says, just counting what you said. Google says.
I think it was. Oh, I don't want to say the same 3 words that you said.
I mean, I guess if it's, you can just provide your side of.
I think it was important.
Okay.
I think it was. There's a word on the tip of my tongue that I can't think of. You know, let's not. I don't want to kill time trying to think of 2 more words. I can't really.
20 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's what I was like. No, guys. I think it's like it starts with an A. So I did like this movie. You know, it's kind of hard to. It's a biopic, so it's like it's telling a real life story.
Yes.
You know, so it's like you go into it knowing that this isn't. I think these kind of films, the importance is to try to relay as much of the facts and as much of the real life scenarios that did play out over time. You know, but they also want to be entertaining as well. But I think, you know, at the heart of like biopics, it's really to just tell the story and try to stay authentic to that. So I think they did that well. And I think that, you know, when you think of like the 60s, 70s and civil rights and, you know, segregation, you kind of think of it on a broader scale. And if you do think of specifics, you do think of very prominent cases like, you know, Brown versus Board of Education or things like that. Or you think of prominent figures like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. But it's nice to get kind of a story that's a little on a smaller scale, but that was of equal importance. You know, it's just maybe it wasn't talked about as much. I mean, had you guys heard of Ann Atwater? Because I didn't even, I don't think I ever heard her name before. No. You know, so you know, thankfully for her, that, you know, somebody thought that story and what she did and accomplished was relevant enough and important enough to make a movie about it. I definitely agree with you, though. I'm sure Ruben agrees as well that the trailer was a little misleading because you think that, I mean, it's these 2, you know, figures kind of prominent in their own right, you know, CP with the Ku Klux Klan and Ann with the, you know, kind of civil rights movement, kind of facing off and going head to head. And so you think it's going to be a pretty 50-50 split in terms of narratives and in terms of, you know, basically learning about their personal lives and their personal struggles that they had to go through, but it's really kind of one-sided. I feel like they tell you a lot about CP, you know, and what he went through and his family and his, like, you know, and we got some of Ann's, you know, we learned a little bit about her. We know she
has a daughter.
Yeah, I was gonna say we knew she had a daughter, and
but we didn't know who the father figure was or why he wasn't in the picture.
Nope. And, you know, and one of the things that I noticed right off the bat, because I didn't know, it took me a minute to realize that she was, like, working for this kind of, I don't know, like, nonprofit organization that was trying to, like, better the community. Because I didn't know, like, I'm like, who is this woman? Like, what's her occupation? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I should have did a little homework, I guess. But I feel like they could have been a little... Right, I was waiting for Ruben to say that. You shouldn't need to do that on your homework. But I was kind of waiting for them to kind of, you know, break it down from the get-go, like, this is who she is, this is what she does. But, you know, I mean, you get that kind of midway through. But yeah, I did like the movie, and I think that obviously Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell, 2 great actors. I think that they did so well in this film, performance-wise. Taraji P. Henson is always so delightful to see on screen, even in her worst movies. Not trying to, talk smack or anything, but like Acrimony. let's acknowledge the elephant in the room here, okay? Acrimony was not a great movie at all. But her performance was really what kind of
was one of the positives.
Was the positive of that film, and and I think here again, I mean, she's just a strong actress, and I feel like Anne Atwater, who is this, really boisterous, outspoken, prominent figure, I think Taraji P. Henson was able to capture that so well and just deliver the role with like such passion. And Sam Rockwell, he wasn't as obviously wasn't as I don't know. I feel like his performance was a little more toned down, but he was still very much a leader in his community, and people did look to him as a role model.
Right.
So I don't know. I think they both just delivered stellar performances on that end.
I think they brought what they were supposed to, and I'm assuming here, and this is just a big assumption, that they did at the very least an accurate representation of the real life people. So you can't necessarily say like Sam Rockwell didn't like outshine Taraji P. Henson. It just feels like the two characters were just two complete different characters. One was at a point where a lot of what he's used to is changing around him, and it's a tough thing to just adjust. Where Taraji P. Henson is trying to push forward and trying to get that change to happen, because if they're talking about wanting these changes for the country, it should start happening. So these little things matter. I still think that delivery and that court scene with what we talk about important. Like,
yeah,
I still like that line. That was like one of the favorite lines that she says.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like that. So I feel like it's kind of it's they delivered what they were supposed to, and I think that kind of helped. Like with Sam Rockwell, I felt like he was struggling with like this realization of my ideas, my beliefs may be incorrect or may be no longer what they originally were supposed to be, or were have to grow as a person, whatever those kinds of thought processes were. And for her, she was still more of like, we need to get everyone on the same page. So
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that kind of brings me to, my next point, which is kind of this film was getting a little bit of backlash with some critics, and they're calling it kind of this year's Green Book, in the sense that it's like another typical kind of white savior film where it's like, we had to kind of rely on the white person to like come in and save the day, which it kind of did set it up for at the end there. I already said this is a spoiler discussion, but basically they were in this...
Unless you did your real life research and you know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you were there. You're an older person. But they were doing this charrette where they had to they had to kind of make this like
community, like little local group, I
little
guess.
election kind of thing, and they had to vote on if they wanted segregation or not. And it was down
with
to
two other things. Yeah,
two other issues, but the prominent one being school integration amongst blacks and whites.
Yes.
And they through a bunch of factors that happened, and there was some intimidation involved, some threatening involved, and people rallying, one side or another. Basically, it came down to like C.P. Ellis was the last vote, and if it was, everyone just knew, or everyone assumed because he was the KKK leader, and he was for not integrating the schools, that he was going to vote against it, but he actually ended up voting for it, which
got to the 8 votes.
So it was like, yes, like, it was a really a celebratory moment and a time for rejoicing, and it was like, yes, like, it was so cool to see his character go from being so close-minded and kind of just focusing on what's best for his people, mm-hmm. to really opening up his eyes and really changing his heart and changing how he views other people in general. So that was nice. But people were like, that's just typical Hollywood, like relying on the white man to like save the day, and Ruben kind of pointed that out when we were walking out of the theater. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, it was a nice moment and it's a good story, but I don't really know how to feel about the whole white savior.
I mean, does that impact your Green Book?
No, that doesn't impact Green Book for me. And
It wasn't the same.
Was it the same?
Green Book, I didn't get that.
You didn't get that vibe?
The critics did. I mean, you did say it was the critics that were saying that they were making that statement.
This was apparent
because it was a decision made. I mean, I guess the other one was more about like one person willing to do this work.
It was presented as him changing. Like,
but versus this one was yeah.
Like two unlikely friends, and I thought we were going to see them become friends. They never became friends, technically.
Became allies.
Until the end, the last scenes. But it wasn't like a growing relationship.
Yeah. It was a lot of like headbutting throughout the entire film, and then finally kind of CPLs kind of gave in, so to speak. I mean, not gave in like, okay, whatever, like I don't care, but like but he was the one that kind of had to change. But you know what? I really liked let me just talk to a specific scene when Taraji P. Henson went to visit his son in that mental hospital, and he asked one of the African American nurses for a favor to switch him over to his own room because he was agitated by his new roommate. So then when CP found out about it, he wasn't happy, and he stormed into the cafeteria. But I liked that he was like, "Don't be doing me any favors," and she quickly was like, "I didn't do it for you." And I was just like, I really liked that, because it was like, I mean, maybe I still don't really know why she did it. Maybe just trying to just rise above and just like take the high road or really she maybe in the moment really felt sympathetic for the son. Because as a parent, right, and maybe looking at it like that. But I don't know. That scene just really like, I don't know why. It just almost that like got me really emotional. There were way more emotional scenes in the movie, but that little rebuttal there really got to me.
I didn't do it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the movie, and I can understand. I totally understand that perspective of like being a white savior. I mean, it's tough to argue given that this was a true story, and that's a lot of true stories that are coming a little bit more so with that kind of angle, I guess. But I mean, yeah, I think this one.
Yes, that is true. Like there were a lot of white people back then that did help African Americans and help them, that they were in a position of power to kind of implement some changes and really believe that.
But right.
So it's like, but that's not all. Like, I feel like in these films, they always emphasize it so much, and it's like, or like The Help. I love The Help. That's one of my favorite movies, but the same thing. It's like Emma Stone's character was the one who wrote this book for all the black maids, and she was really like the hero of the film, and she was courageous and brave for doing it. And,
and I think that's
at a time where no one was doing it.
Maybe that's probably one thing that could be the problem with that is trying to define the hero, I guess, in that sense. Because maybe there is not necessarily a hero, but to me, I feel like the black community were able to prove something. I think like that is their victory, right? Like they were able to get someone that was complete opposite perspective and didn't see same side to finally see that they're all the same. They all come from the same blood, as she says in the movie as well. That
yeah.
So I mean, like that's how I took it at the end, was that they were able to do enough to convince one person. If they can do that to one person, then it could be eventually to everyone seeing that same perspective. And it wasn't necessarily about forcing him either. It wasn't like they said, if you don't vote in our favor, we're gonna go burn your house down, right?
Right.
And so that's why it's kind of like I can see it, but I didn't necessarily walk away saying like, because he made that choice, he's a hero. I just walked away with they were able to show there's much more to what a community is and to what different cultures have than what you probably thought of. And so that's how I just took it. I just took it more of just like they managed to show, like it was kind of like they not, I don't want to say convinced, but it was just more of like they just opened his eyes wider than what he originally was viewing. So
yeah. I don't know.
I wouldn't say hero. Like I wouldn't call him a hero. I wouldn't be like he's a hero because he made that choice, that selfish choice.
Right.
I think it was just more.
I mean, it was his action that ultimately it was his vote that it came down to. So I mean,
but I still wouldn't say he's the hero. I feel like I just would label him as more of someone that just finally was seeing from another side of the impact that he can decide on. Like his vote was going to make a difference here in that sense, like that kind of always becomes a thing. And I just didn't
know
label
what?
it as a hero though. That's just my
True. Although I think he also wasn't like really the antagonist of the film either.
Right.
Like I think that is, I mean, if you're telling me like about these two people, one guy, KKK member leader who doesn't want integration to happen, and Ann Atwater who's fighting for integration.
Yeah.
I would clearly be like, okay, Ann Atwater's the protagonist and he is the antagonist. He's the villain of the film.
Right.
However, he wasn't really villainous. He was a pretty likable guy.
I think he only did like one thing, was in that initially in the beginning when he went to go terrorize a girl for dating a black, or for seeing a black guy.
Right. But and I get, but it's like,
that was
and
like,
I don't know if this was Sam Rockwell, like maybe we just have come to like him or something. I don't know. But like, I still, even when he was doing that, it didn't come off like, oh, I hate this guy already kind of thing. And it was, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they gave us so many moments. They gave us so many moments with him. They gave us like the side of him that's the family man, and he has kids, and he has a really not cool, cool, understanding wife. And then they tried to like make us sympathize with him because he has a mentally disabled kid in a facility. So it's like, oh, poor guy. It's like, they weren't giving us. And they didn't really give us ammo to hate him or not like him, other than the fact that he was the leader of the KKK. That's it. And even then, we didn't really dislike him.
So I would really hope that the movie didn't just turn away from actions he did do. I would hope that what we saw was a pretty good, I would say 90% accurate of like his life.
Yeah.
I would really be disappointed to know that he did many more things during this time frame. Like before, maybe it would be a different story, but like during this specific time that he was going through this through that whole process, then I think that would really cut the movie's legs in terms of like really trying to showcase a character that was shown a different perspective. What I'm thinking of, because that's what that's how I take the movie as. It was just to being able to convince one person, the leader of a strong community that's against it, to seeing, well, maybe I can't convince my entire team here that I have following me, but I'm going to do what I think is best now for everyone living in the city, living in this town, whatever.
Right.
That's how I just like took it. But yeah, I would really undercut it if he did like a lot of things attempting to make it stop or make the voting not happen. I know like they showed his friends trying to do that to get the votes on their side. And that part of it was, that was tough to see.
Can you imagine if like that was really him that did it?
Yeah.
Or like that was his order, or like
Right.
he ordered them to do it, but they like left that out. So I don't know. Now I'm kind of afraid to do any digging to find out, because I'm like,
I don't think a movie would do.
I would hope not.
Right.
But I mean, you never know. But I mean, I think overall though, I mean, the message was definitely, clearly important. And I will say that one of the things I found a hard time, I felt like this movie kind of dragged out a little bit. I think it was like a 2 hour and 13-minute movie.
It'd be longer. Just kidding.
And I get that it's like, it's an important story, and you got to give us, you got to give time to like
Life
tell
is
them,
more than 2
tell them
hours,
what happened.
Donnie.
Shut up. I know you ain't talking.
We're about to see a 3-hour movie at the end of the month. So.
Yeah, we are. Well worth it. But, and I know that it was, first of all, I just want to quickly throw out that I never knew what a charrette was. Never even heard of that word. Did you?
Nope.
Okay. So that movie, we all walked away knowing what that was, I guess. So that was cool. But it was like the build up to this final voting, and it was like, it was kind of just a slow build, and it was just like, okay, we get it. Like, let's get to the voting part. Like, let's move it along.
I think it would have helped if they would have swapped some of C.P. Ellis with Ann Atwater. I feel like if they would have shown more of her, then you would have been like, I'm not dragging because I'm getting a little bit of balance of both, and I'm like, I really need to find out what's going to happen if the voting goes this way, or whatever, versus getting all on one side and then just like, all right, voting time, and just like,
yeah. And we did, and it's like, and it's crazy too, like, I mean, because it really was like, you not only got C.P. Ellis, but you got his family, his wife, his kids. this was, the kid at the mental hospital. You got his clan members. You got like him at his store. It was so much of him, and it's like all we got from Anne was anytime she was at the school, or at the voting thing, or with anything to do with the charrette. But that was it. Like we didn't get, we got her sitting in her kitchen crying at one night.
Actions are related to something with CP Ellis.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably like the best way to view it. The scene with the wife visiting Anne, you were seeing it through the wife's perspective of her arriving to this home, driving through the community, arriving and going to the door. Mm-hmm. That in itself showcases the kind of perspective that we were getting, more so than if it was us seeing Anne's home, like her doing whatever at home, cooking, teaching her kids, whatever the situation would be at home, then getting a knock on the door and surprise, it's CP Ellis's wife. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of just showcases that we weren't getting more of her, and I think that's what hurt this film a lot. But just that scene kind of just tells you all that we were getting a lot more CP Ellis related scenes than we were with Anne.
Right. So, I mean, that's unfortunate. Would have liked to see more of her life in general, just her at home or her, with her kids more or something.
It was nice to see the real life footage was this post. It wasn't like them during this time and you were seeing photos. It was like them talking about this time.
Yeah.
Post. And obviously this was before, either of them had passed away, but yeah, it was nice to see that kind of like little them reflecting on it and talking about that moment, because it kind of just added some authenticity.
Mm-hmm. I like that they opened with the audio of them speaking about it, and then at the end,
I forgot about the audio. Yeah.
That was really nice. And then they closed it with us. I was like, they better show us the real life people. And thankfully that there's nothing. One of the things that drives me crazy in films and biopics is when we're coming to see this, story about a person and they don't show us the person, or like, I mean, I'll take a photo. Like give me something. There's been instances where they didn't show them at all. And I'm like, what? Like, are you kidding me?
Questions of authenticity.
I'm just like, why? It's so easy to do. It'll take you no time, unless they're, the person themselves or the family is just objecting, like no, or
that could be the case.
Or we didn't give them permission to make this film. We're not gonna.
I would assume that would be the case.
But then it's like, don't make the film then.
If your family
honor the person, and if they don't want the film about them, like. Whatever, that's a whole nother discussion.
That goes back to the business.
That's like a real discussion.
Right.
We'll save that for another time.
Money talks.
Was there a particular scene that you liked or that stood out?
I mean, the scene, well, I would say just the dialogue, that moment when she turns that person in the chair around and says, what we talking about is important.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
I enjoyed that scene.
You damn sure gonna listen.
Yeah. It's in the trailer, so.
Yeah.
You can understand. You can see it many times if you wanted to. What was the other scene? There was another one. I enjoyed their first lunch together, where you kind of saw that they were at odds and it was uncomfortable, and it was intentional that they were put together. I thought that was a good scene as well. I'm trying to think if there was another impactful scene that I walked away with. I liked. I wouldn't say I liked, but I thought it was kind of a little bit of a powerful characteristic that they showed, where at the end where she is helping CP Ellis out with his business and bringing in customers. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a little nice kind of moment that showcases that she is a very prominent leader in her community. So. Yeah. She was like, I know it was like kind of like a thank you for helping us, but I still felt like it showcases that she is a strong person in her community.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, when I was watching that, and at the end of it, I was just like, and a Lannister pays her debt. I was thinking Game of Thrones.
every Atwater pays her debts. Atwater always pays her debts. That's great. No, those are great scenes. I think I mean. I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but the scene I did mention where, she basically said she didn't change the rooms for his son, for him. I like that scene. I really liked the first time we saw Anne Atwater on screen when she was in the office with that girl.
Opening.
Very strong, very powerful opening, and I think that just lets you know right off the bat that this woman is like a force to be reckoned with, and like she will she has no problem, no matter who you are, no matter what desk you're sitting behind, she has no problem like speaking her mind and fighting for her people, and just describing what the girl she was fighting for was, she was like, she hasn't had hot water and the toilet hasn't been working and this is no way to live. It just like resonated so much, and I feel like all of those scenes, almost every one of her scenes resonated really emotionally, like, because she was just oozing with like passion and frustration and fight, and just, it was like great. But the opening made me go whoa, like made me really take notice.
But we had seen that already once from Taraji P. Henson.
Yeah, we did.
I will say, when I first saw that scene, I was hoping that wasn't just going to be her character in that like aggressive format. Which, I mean, not to say that would have been bad, but because that would mean if that was her in real life. But I know that there would have been more to her, and I would have been a little disappointed if they just showed like her always just being aggressive. Mm-hmm. But they did show her, living her life as well in the bits that they had, and it wasn't always her like demanding or yelling. It was just her trying to make you listen, and if you weren't listening, you're gonna have to, she's gonna have to try harder to make you listen. So I understood it later on watching the rest of the movie of how that opening scene played out, but at first I was like, whoa, she's coming swinging hard.
And I was too. I was like, please don't let her be just like the typical like angry black female the whole film. Like, please show different sides to her, and they did. She didn't have much chance to show different sides, but for the little bits that we saw, it was
another character that I really liked outside of these two was the one military veteran who had came back and he was running his store. Yeah, and he had a black person being like manager. Mm-hmm. I liked his character because his character, despite being like, his business, despite being like attacked and targeted. He wasn't changing his beliefs, and he still stood his ground and voted yes for the integration. So I really liked that kind of just showing you it wasn't everyone. Mm-hmm. And there was another girl who was on that side that was going to say yes until they
intimidated her.
Yeah, and they threatened her essentially.
The business owner, when he was telling CP that he served the country, and he was like, oh, any person that serves this country is, I respect, blah, blah, blah. I love when he said that the black guy who's his manager, he said that he served this country too, and he was a lot braver than I was. And you could just like let that sink in, like you're just watching CP really like letting that sink in, like mind blown, like he never thought about it, Right. And it was so true. Like it was like, that was probably one of my favorite scenes too. Because he said it so, it wasn't like he was trying to jab at him. He was just simply stating truth. He was just like, and he said it so calmly and so, just in such a nice way.
Yeah.
Loved it. Any scenes you particularly liked, Ruben? Or did we cover them?
I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think the same one Oscar said.
The same one Oscar said.
About when she turned that guy around.
Oh, the chair.
Oh, when she turned him in the chair.
What we're talking about is important.
Yeah.
Say it again. Say it again. Say the whole line.
I'm not even saying the line right.
All right. Time for our final real scores, Oscar. What do you give this movie?
I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. And I feel like the reason for that, some of the things technical side of it that we talked about, but I think the biggest one more than that is just that it wasn't a fair balance between the two sides. And not that there was anything wrong with seeing C.P. Ellis's side, but it was just, it leaned too much on that I felt like it wasn't fair for Anne to get her side of her story to share. It's kind of like, to put in a like interpretation, it's kind of like two people being interviewed, and one person thinking the more they talk, the more they're most likely going to get the job. So they're talking more and more about like their background, and the other person can't get a word in. Kind of was like that in this movie. It was just more of like they wanted to showcase more on C.P. Ellis, but they could have given some of that attention to Anne. And who knows? I mean, who knows if the reason was because maybe they didn't have enough information. Maybe they didn't get an opportunity to get like concrete like details of what she was going through at this time. But as Donnie said, then why make them? I guess outside of business reasons. But yeah, so I feel like that was probably the biggest thing that hurt it. In addition to like the technical stuff. Yeah, that's 3 out of 5.
Okay. All right. I am going to be a little bit nicer and give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think the acting alone, Taraji P, Henson, Sam Rockwell just did so good. I think it was a really important story to tell. And I like that they're giving recognition and voice to these two figures that we may have not even, heard about. And maybe it gets, sometimes people get kind of lost in the shuffle underneath the grand, looking at the grand scheme of things and in retrospect. But it's like it takes all the actions of all these individuals to accumulate in this big change that took place at that time. So, it's nice to always get those stories told. So I really like that. And I thought the film was, it was a good film, and we got a lot of information, and we got to see these events play out, but it did drag out a little bit, and it was a little one-sided towards CP's narrative and not so much on Ann Atwater's narrative. But despite those things, I thought it was a really nicely told story, and I think, even in 2019, I think you can find something or someone to relate to in the film, and I really liked it. So, Ruben, what's your final real score?
I'm going to give it a 3.5.
3.5 as well. So, 3.5 for me, 3.5 for Ruben, a 3 for Oscar. It's not bad.
No, I definitely would recommend people to watch this one. I think this one is, just again, my 3 words.
Yeah. One more time.
One more time, because it was so done well. Just kidding. But no, I think if anything, just to get more information on this moment in history, I think it's just nice to have that little insight. It's not necessarily the one thing that shook history, but it was nice to see just a little bit more insight.
Right. Absolutely. Well, listeners, we definitely want to know what you guys thought about the film, so don't forget to share your thoughts. Remember, you can let us know Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on YouTube, and on iTunes. Share your thoughts. Let us know what you thought of the film. And remember, if you can, please rate us on iTunes. We would greatly appreciate it. As always, we're so grateful for you guys just listening to us and supporting us. So we just thank you guys. You guys are awesome. So thank you for listening to this episode, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.